one side thing that's very important though is McLuhan said, when you put television, a tactile medium around the whole world, each culture has an identity crisis, and they'll hop into another cultural sensibility to get out of the pressure tactility is putting on them. So the East became West. That's why all these Asian students flooded into the colleges and taken over the left hemisphere activity for the last 30 years. And all the Western kids, boomers and generations, go East. They either do it by Jack Kerouac, or they go to Tokyo, or they go to Peace Corps, or they go to the Africa, or they take drugs. You know, the point is we can't handle the tactile implications because no world culture had ever experienced the extension of tactility, which is television, the extension of the operations of the central nervous system, which is a ratio organizing the ratio proportions of different senses. Tactility organizes your sensory inputs, eye, hear, touch, smell, and then it makes coherent consciousness. The thing that does that is tactility. But don't just think it's in the mind or the brain, it's in the heart. Because if you look at the systole diastole action, you ever see footage for heart pumping? You know, blood's going up, blood's going in. If you look at it, you can't see it precisely. It's like a blur because it's going in like 4 directions at the same time. That is an image of tactility. That's push-pull at the same time. So, tactile, when McLuhan emphasized electricity extension of the central nervous system, the nervous system is not just in the head, it's all through the body. Think of the heart, think of breathing. We've extended our breath spirit as a medium with television, and so wouldn't the culture express that? Yellow Submarine, All You Need Is Love, Hearts and Love and all that stuff in the late 60s, which is well after the TV era in the 50s. It's computers and satellites is the hidden new technology in the 60s. So we have the English, I know it like the back of my hand. We have the Russians, I know it like the palm of my hand.
What's the English significance to the back of my hand? It's just also
that's visual. McLuhan thinks that's visual. It actually has lines. Think of the linear.
You also write on it.
You write on it, yeah. And you do more touching in that. You don't touch with the back of your hand. It's kind of just something you look at. You know what I mean? People look at their fingernails, right? But you feel with this. So that's tactile. So the Russians, I know with the palm of my hand, that's...
It's also visual, isn't it? The Russian.
What do you mean? I know like the palm of my hand? Is sort of still visual. Yeah, they've always identified with the West. They were Christianized. They were manuscriptized, you know, in the Dark Ages, Middle Ages. So yes, they were part. They have the writing.
Visual.
Yeah, it's light through, as McLuhan talked about, but it's they're more Western than China. So, but they're taking this. So yeah, you can have English, Russia. That's the English side of eye culture, and that's the tactile side of eye culture. And then the Spanish, I know it as if I'd given birth to it. That's probably such a visceral. The Germans say I know it like inside my pocket. That's tactile interface. Now, the Germans did really well in the 90s. They're still doing well. They're buying up all the publishing, Bertelsmann, these people. They have big power in the internet world. They own a lot of companies. It's interesting that Germany took over in the 90s. Like the Japanese took over in the 70s. We were in a tactile culture in the 70s and 80s. One-way tactile. Mass medium of tactility. So the Japanese, unconsciously or whatever, or we let them come in because they had that senses. They could ride the tactile nature of industry in the 70s and 80s. But then they collapsed in the early 90s because we move into tactile interface because the internet provides interactivity. And interface, you're interacting. It's not just one way. So it's interesting that Germans ride in on that. And so they're tactile interface, good description of the internet, your experience when you're on the computer. So the French, I know autophone, they're auditory. Now what's interesting about the French is they were popular. Paris was the cultural head in the first half of the 20th century. In the radio era, which is acoustic, the French can ride that wave with their sensibility. So you can see the Parisians with their Jean-Paul Sartre existentialism, which is a real acoustic primitive sensibility, a retrieval acoustic sensibility. The Parisians are the cultural center in the first part of the 20th century. But what's interesting is that who were the famous artists of the Parisian world? Picasso and Braque, these people, they came from Spain, Salvador Dali. So within art, the Spanish thing did a nice twist on the acoustic effect of movies and telephones and radio. So they had the Spanish proprioceptive because the electric nervous system, the extension of the nervous system is tactile, and your inner space, your proprioceptive. So it's interesting in retrospect how cultures rise under the bias of a particular medium, and nobody's aware of it. But Marshall became aware of that process. So who did I leave out? The Talmuders, I know it like the snake swimming in water, the dance of thought among words. There's 8 of them. All Americans, so I know it inside out. Kinetic manipulatory. It's interesting that they built the car culture, the assembly lines, what's called the Fordist economy all over the world. And that needs top-down management. So they would be manipulatory. That's the kinetic bias of the industry level, of the industry medium of the 19th and early 20th century. And McLuhan said America would eventually have the biggest identity crisis because it was visually biased. He never said it was kinetic biased, but it was visually biased. And it would suffer the most. America has suffered the most as a culture. Everybody thinks it's violent and guns and all this stuff. It suffered that, but really it was because it was a kinetic bias culture, and kinetic bias culture couldn't handle the tactile television situation.